Everyone's favorite airplane is back in the sky, the 737 MAX. Oh, wait a minute. It's the Airbus A380, the pinnacle of luxury flying. Of course, we have Emirates with their onboard showers and bar, Singapore Airlines with their signature suites and boundless amenities. We also have Qatar Airways bringing theirs back next month, and then we have British Airways. Yet, almost everyone I've spoken to agrees that there is no more comfortable ride than an Airbus A380, whether you're seated in economy, business, or first class. This used to be the case for British Airways as well, but starting in 2019, things changed. So hi guys, it has been a crazy 24 hours. I flew in from New York yesterday. Well, I landed this morning. It was a 4 p.m. departure from New York on the first 747-400 that Lufthansa is bringing back into service to the US, so it was a huge deal. But the flight lands here at 5 a.m., which is 11 p.m. New York time, so it's just brutal. It's pretty much impossible to get sleep on the flight, so I got a hotel here, slept 2 hours, now I'm here, and I'm just a zombie. Like, I can't concentrate on anything. I'm so tired. What was I doing in Frankfurt? Well, I was doing what every other AvGeek has done the past month, flying the British Airways A380. I had the option of flying to Gothenburg, Sweden direct or via London on British Airways, and the choice was pretty easy. Now you might be wondering, what is an A380 doing on a 1 hour flight from London to Frankfurt? It makes no sense, right? Well, if you think about it, the A380 has been grounded for a year and a half, so crew and pilots have literally not been on this plane for a year and a half. So of course they're not just going to send them off to LA or Miami doing 11-hour flights. They need to get retrained. And how do they do that? Well, it's extra effective on short sectors where the crew can do as many of the essential actions as possible. The pilots get to perform a lot of takeoffs and landings. So that's why we have 1 hour flights to Frankfurt and 2 hour flights to Madrid every day to get as many crew as possible up to speed on the A380 again, so it can be back in the skies flying all over the world as soon as possible. So now you know why the A380 is on this route. Let's hop on board and see what we think and why this is not as great as it would initially seem. For this flight, I made the mistake of booking a Club Europe seat for about 250 euros one way because I didn't think I'd be able to tour the plane otherwise. Usually, I'd never spend 250 euros for a 1 hour flight, and it turns out they were happy to give passengers in any cabin a tour on this route. So oops, could have saved 150 euros there. At least I got a meal for that price and contributed to the airline industry.
All right, I will buy it. It'll be good for the economy.
My seat for this journey was the classic Club World seat, and the British Airways A380 has many of them. All their A380s are in the same configuration with an interesting spread of cabins across 2 floors. On the bottom floor between doors 1 and 2, they have a relatively large 14-seat first class cabin. I'll show you what this looks like shortly. Behind that, they have 6 rows of business class, which is extremely rare on the A380 lower deck. They have a mind-blowingly dense 242 configuration here. That's right, only 4 seats or 50% per row have direct aisle access, but there are also 2 middle seats per row. To add insult to injury, these are the seats that face backwards too, which makes some people feel sick. Middle seat and facing backwards? Nice. Behind that is economy class, which also has middle seats, perhaps less surprisingly. These seats don't face backwards, at least. Moving decks, the upper deck is far more pleasant and starts with more business class seats, which are now in a 232 configuration. In total, there are almost 100 business class seats on board this bad boy. Thankfully, there's only 1 middle seat per row up here, which is still one too many, but the great benefit of sitting here is the massive storage lockers along the cabin by the window seats. This is one redeeming quality for a seat that should just redeem its retirement benefits and disappear. Behind that, we have premium economy and then some economy seats. If you can sit in any of these cabins on the upper deck, absolutely do so. Although I am aware that British Airways charges a fortune for pre-selecting seats on long-haul flights. Bloody ripoff. This applies even in premium economy and business class. It leaves a bad bad taste in my mouth that they make people who are already paying thousands of dollars pay a few hundred more to choose where they want to sit unless they're elite members. Now, it goes without saying that flying an A380 within Europe in any cabin is an absolute joy, especially compared to the A320 or 737 business class products which we're used to seeing on these routes. And you know what else would be an absolute joy? If you hit subscribe. It's unimaginably easy, and I really appreciate you just taking 1 second to hit that button. Here we go. Well done. Economy class features adjustable headrests, in-flight entertainment screens, plenty of recline, and most of all, it benefits greatly from the spaciousness of the A380 cabin. I selected 11A in the business class cabin on the lower deck since the upper deck was closed to passengers. I'm sure you've seen this seat many times before, but it will surprise many of you if you haven't seen my other reviews that I actually don't mind these window seats. I'm saying they're not so bad, but they're also not good by most measures. The seat has practically no storage on the lower deck besides this little bin which isn't accessible in bed mode. Above that is the tray table and the in-flight entertainment screen. Further back on the left you'll find seat controls and the button which makes this seat bearable. The one that raises the partition so you don't have to sit face to face with your neighbor for 10 hours. This awkward seating where you sit face to face with a stranger is a great concept for a new dating show, but not so much for little me in the window seat sitting eye to eye with some 70-year-old British aristocracy who literally spoke like he'd played with a queen growing up. So in hindsight, maybe this seat actually did present a cool networking opportunity. This flight over to London was only an hour, which was barely enough time to recline my seat, so as we taxied out, I prepared for how I was going to ask the crew for a tour of the aircraft. We left a dreary Frankfurt behind, heading for a not so dreary London to everyone's surprise. To describe how it feels taking off in an A380 if you've never flown it before, picture being inside an IKEA warehouse and all of a sudden the entire store just disconnects from the ground. There's basically no motion before liftoff, then a slight jolt and suddenly you're in the air. It's beyond smooth. So much fun already and things are just getting started. Before I had the chance to even leave my seat, the meal service had begun. My vegan meal was a quinoa salad, cliche, I know, with this overnight oat style dessert. The food was pretty good for a 1-hour flight, but I wasn't very hungry since it was barely 6 a.m. in New York, where I'd flown in from the night before. Next up, I bravely asked the crew if they could give me a tour of the rest of the aircraft, and they agreed. I excitedly got up and walked through the curtain into first class. Today's video is sponsored by Keeps. Did you know that 2 in 3 men experience male pattern baldness by the time they're 35? As we get older, our hairlines crawl up and in, and before we know it, we look like our dads. And I love my dad, but one thing I don't aspire to is having his hair. God bless him. The scary part is that it's usually begun before we start noticing it, and by the time we do, it might be too late. Well, Keeps stops hair loss in its tracks with FDA-approved solutions, and you can get doctor support 24/7 if you have any questions about your treatment. You can get control of that thinning hair easier than you think at keeps.com/nonstop with 50% off your first treatment. That's keeps.com/nonstop. So I walked through the magical curtains to first class and discovered half a dozen other people who had also asked for tours. This was like one massive AvGeek meetup. I really wouldn't have had to worry about asking for it. Note that this obviously won't be possible on long-haul flights where passengers are booked in these cabins, but on these flights within Europe, it presents a unique opportunity. Anyway, we started our grand tour in first class with the massive 14-seat cabin. These seats are pretty huge in comparison to their 777 and 787 seats, but they're not exactly the most private. They remind me a little bit of Qantas first class with the high walls. Being on the lower deck feels less cozy than the upper deck, but who am I kidding? It would be great to fly first class and sit anywhere regardless of which deck you're on. In front of first, you find the staircase to the upper deck. No, there's not an elevator on board, not that anyone ever asked. Just walking around exploring the A380, is there anything more fun than that? On the upper deck, we have two far more cozy business class cabins than downstairs. The ceilings are lower, but the A380 windows still let in plenty of natural light, making the cabin feel bright and spacious. Behind this is the surprising gem of the A380, the premium economy and upstairs economy cabin. It is such a pleasure as a passenger in these cabins to have the upper deck. Between the lower noise levels, the storage bins on the side, and the two seats by the window as opposed to three. It's genuinely one of the most comfortable economy and premium economy cabins in the world. By the time we were done with the tour, we only had 15 minutes to go until touchdown at Heathrow, and moments later we pulled into our gate at Concourse C of Terminal 5 right on time. After landing, I made a quick visit to the cockpit, and the pilot was just as excited as we were to have the A380 back. So now finally, why is this all bad news? What happened in 2019 to make the British Airways A380 worse? Well, first of all, British Airways introduced a little something called Club Suites. People have been hating on this legacy Club World seat that you saw in the video for ages, so this new direct aisle access reverse herringbone seat was an incredible upgrade. It even has a closing door. It's not the best seat in the world in my opinion, but I would choose this over the normal Club World seat any day. The problem is that the A380 is mainly replacing 777s and A350-1000s on its routes to places like Dubai, Miami, and Los Angeles. And those happen to be the aircraft that offer club suites on board. That means passengers will actually be getting a pretty significant downgrade to this Club World seat instead. However, there's no denying that this is a massive upgrade for people in all other cabins. Except it seems we can't have it both ways, where business class passengers are happy while economy class passengers are happy, and vice versa. Why? Because British Airways is allegedly still planning to reconfigure its A380s. This is fantastic news for the future of this aircraft and shows strong long-term commitment. As part of this, however, the plan is to install club suites and remove business class entirely from the lower deck. The entire upper deck will then become a premium floor with business class all the way back, which means economy and premium economy will be moved downstairs. That's a great update for business class passengers, which resolves this temporary bad news about Club World, but it also means that the great upstairs seats that currently occupy the rear upper deck won't be around for much longer. So the benefit for premium economy and economy passengers will actually disappear. Such a shame. Can they just build another deck and give everyone more comfort? We just can't have club suites and upstairs economy in the same world, I guess. But whatever the configuration, we can all agree on one thing. We are so happy the A380 is back, and I will be flying it as often as I can, worst seat or not. After all, we gotta make the most of the unparalleled comfort of being in a flying warehouse. Okay, I'll see you guys soon. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, and until I see you all next time, fly safe.